Okay, so I kept seeing Emily Henry books everywhere, and I thought, what the heck, I'll pick one up. And then I read 3 of them in like a week. Emily Henry's incredibly popular. Her fans have no chill about her books. Today we're going to talk about what does her popularity tell us about what readers want right now. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, look, if you've been in a bookstore lately, there's a good chance you've walked past an Emily Henry book. There's, first of all, so many of them. Second of all, to say that she's a best-selling author feels like an understatement. Emily is a literary sensation. She's been credited with maybe cracking the modern romance novel for a new generation. People have made the comparison to Nora Ephron. Not only that, all her recent books have been turned into movies or TV shows, and now she's back at the top of the bestseller list. She's got a new one, maybe her most divisive love story yet. Today, C.T. Jones is here. Alicia Foshay is here. We're going to talk about the Emily Henry literary universe. We have a lot to get into. C.T. and Alicia, welcome to the show, y'all. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Nice to have you here. Man, what a time. Let's get into it. Alicia, I'll start with you. For those who have not ever picked up an Emily Henry book, tell me what it's like to read her work. What are maybe the defining characteristics that make up an Emily Henry book?
I always say that an Emily Henry book feels like being on vacation and also coming home. I have always felt like there's something that takes you away from your worries a little bit, and you get to kind of immerse yourself in a new world, but also her characters are given so much generosity from her that it also feels like, you know, you're being understood and seen and portrayed. And I think that's why so many people identify with certain main characters, similar to how people would describe themselves by Sex and the City characters, like I'm a Miranda or I'm a Charlotte.
Yeah.
You have people saying I'm a Harriet or I'm a Daphne.
Yeah.
And so I think that Emily Henry's books, even if they're not completely romance, they are love stories, and you find yourself in love stories. That's why they connect with so many people.
I'm an Alice Scott, but we'll get to that later because I think that's a significant development for me. CT, I mentioned off the top that, you know, like these characters that she creates, like those are, you know, we talk about their jobs, you know, we talk about the idea that one of them is a librarian and one of them is a doctor and one of them is a writer, and they sort of, but they also really feel lived in here. So what are the kinds of women and men that she's writing about?
Look, the best part about Emily Henry is that if you've met them, she's probably writing about them, right? There's always one character. This doesn't have to be the main one. There's a real lover boy, right? There's no easy villains. There could be someone who's broken up with you, but then 4 to 12 chapters in, you're like, wait a minute, they've had a hard life too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody has an I want statement, which isn't always the case with romance. It's just people who want to be loved and want love and are superhuman, which makes it really, really easy to lock in, because even if you're like, this is literally the stupidest person I've ever met in my life, the joy of Emily Henry is by the end, you're like, wait, they should get to kiss people too, you know?
What I'm finding so far, so I'm 3 books into this universe, and what I'm finding fascinating is, I think like the sort of like the empathy that she imbues all of these characters with. Like you get to sort of like walk with them as you go, like, yes, well, that doesn't sound like a particularly good choice that you made. And then like a few chapters later, kind of go like, well, you don't think it was a good choice either. But also I kind of understand how your life led you to this point. And I feel like what I usually expect from this particular genre is people who are making choices without those choices being particularly lived in. I want to come back to that in a moment. A lot of the discourse around her books have kind of come around the writing style and the idea that like the straddling of genres, right? Straddling of the genre of romance and literary fiction, or more specifically women's fiction. Sort of like moving between those two universes. I think it maybe be able to help us, like, we got to define a little bit of those categories. CT, how would you describe the difference between, you know, this idea of like, okay, there's romance and then there's women's fiction, and those are two different things?
I am so glad you asked. What a beautiful question, Elamin. The answer is sexism. I'm joking. But
Get into it. Go off.
Yeah.
No, that's real. That's
I'm
real.
actually
Get into it.
Not joking. Women's fiction is an umbrella term to kind of understand the publishing landscape. Everything is not about how good a book it is. It's about how easy you can market it to as many people as possible. So women's fiction is kind of this term to be like, we think girls will pick this up in a library, and we think that moms who are on vacation to Mallorca will see this in the middle of the airport and say, I could read this for a couple days. That's what people think of when they think of women's fiction. It's also important to note that there is no comparable version for men's fiction because people just assume that men can understand genres better. So instead, you don't have to be like, this is for the boys. You just get to write a book and put dragons on it. And everyone apparently knows who it's for.
Yeah.
But one of the things about women's fiction that you can usually tell it by is people usually market it if there's a big emotional journey, some kind of giant life change, or people are kind of working through their emotions on that, their feelings about being human in general, or some kind of historic event. And then romance, the easiest way that I can think about it is emotions can occur. And sometimes it's awesome if they do, but if there isn't a happily ever after at the end of the book, there will be hell to pay.
That's the expectation.
Yes,
take me
the
to that place. Alicia, famously, men don't have emotions. That's why they just call it. They just call them fiction. I believe. What are your thoughts? Like, I saw you wanted to jump in there as CT was answering.
Yeah, no, I am in complete agreement, and I don't think we should pull back on the sexism thing. I think it's completely true. I think people in general are comfortable with things tailored to women that are one-dimensional, and so they like to fit things into boxes because the idea that a book tailored to women could be about more than romance, love, and daisies is unfathomable. And it's the same way that George R.R. Martin can write Game of Thrones, which is a highly sexualized fantasy series, and it's not called Dragon Smut. But when Rebecca Yarros does it, the exact same thing, it is. And it's tailored to women, and it's viewed as not an important book in the space of fantasy. And so I think that, and also I also think that it's almost a little bit insulting to men too. You're reading Emily Henry and you're enjoying them. Like, men can enjoy highly emotional books. We all have the capacity to kind of move between genres, and I think that's kind of what Emily Henry is doing with the evolution of her books.
Well, even like this idea of, I think like initially, like when I heard about Emily Henry, I think she was sort of positioned as a romance writer. And the first one that I read was Funny Story. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I think you could see this as romance at the center of the story. But then the second one I read was her most recent one, Great Big Beautiful Life, which we'll come back to in a moment. And there is romance in it, but there's also so much more, just like sort of, it's a large kind of expansive world. It kind of like moves a bunch in between different periods. Now I'm reading Happy Place, which is, again, romance at the center of it, but also at the same time, a lot of friendships falling apart, drifting, and kind of coming back together, which is to say, like, these are not straightforward romance. And I think if anybody who has been reading romance for a long time to go, that's just what romance is. Like, the idea that you would read a romance and it's only a love story, that has maybe not been true for 20 years, but we've been maybe limiting ourselves to the conception of what romance is and saying, that is just a romance book, when in fact, a romance book can, in fact, be all of those things, CT. Where do you think we sort of like draw those ideas where we limit ourselves in our understanding of what the genre is?
Sounds like people should read more books. Anytime someone comes up to me and they're like, oh, it's just a romance, I'm like, so you don't like joy? You don't like humor?
You don't want to laugh?
Sorry.
You don't like love it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Live, love, laugh.
Me.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were all boring here. And this is coming from someone, I read a lot of books, right? I read too many books every year.
You want to drop a number? Like, how many books did you read last year? Because I heard the number from our producer.
I read 200 last year.
Yeah, that's just staggering, dude. Incredible. Can't even, there's not.
But it's like, that's a problem. You know what I mean? That's not, you shouldn't clap. You should actually be like,
that's
later
maybe too
you should
many.
be like, you should be like, CT, are you okay as a person?
But continue, sorry.
Yeah.
People should read more books. Yes.
People should read more books. And also, I think romance has everything that every other book has, except at the end, you're like, good. Oh, whew. That was scary.
Yeah.
Glad that's over with. I'm glad that these two people get to be together. I don't know. It just seems so embarrassing that people still have a mindset, which I know you said the idea, the frame of like that hasn't been existed for 20 years ago. I would say since the conception of romance, it's been misunderstood. It's been vilified. And the fact that we sometimes have books where they make sexy hot men take their shirts off doesn't mean there's not a lot of emotional depth in these novels.
I want to ask you, Alicia, maybe we can settle this argument and put, do you want to put Emily Henry in a category? Like, do you want to put her in a specific genre that she belongs in, do you think?
When I wrote when I was even thinking or talking about Great Big Beautiful Life when it came up, because, and I know we'll get to it, the discourse around what genre it fits in, I always said that if Emily Henry writes it, you know it's written by her, regardless of what genre you find yourself in. I think she has a very distinctive style and voice, and again with the empathy for her characters. And so when I read her books, I identify them as love stories more than romance, place, self, friendships. It all kind of comes together, and then at the end you have the safety of knowing that it's going to end well. And I think you don't get that safety in real life, and so that is a comfort. It's why people flock towards these happily ever afters. I put her in women's fiction. I put her alongside writers like Abby Jimenez and Carly Fortune and Taylor Jenkins Reid, where you have these books that include romance but aren't about only the romance. And I think that lends depth to the female characters, who used to be a little bit one-dimensional, just by way of, this is what the publishing industry wants, this is what sells, this is what you're expected to write. And I think that there's a lot of privilege in being a white author who can expand and move between genres and still know that their books are going to hit the New York Times bestseller list. I think that it's interesting to me when authors choose to do that, and you can tell which ones stick to what they're contracted to do.
Well, I was going to say, like Emily Henry particularly, like she really took a big swing with this most recent one. So a great, big, beautiful life.
Absolutely.
Just as a structure, as a story, she's doing something that's like much more broad than the other books have been. CT, do you want to, maybe without spoilers, do you want to get into, what do you think about her most recent book?
Wow, do you want me to tell me what I thought, or do you want me to explain it a little bit? I can do both. I hold multitudes.
Why don't you explain it a little bit in terms of like the scope of the book, and then tell me what you thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to my world, people. We open a book to see Alex Scott. She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. She's the kind of person who wears tutus and maybe polka dot, leggings, things like that. She wants to get the writing job of her dream, right? She gets to meet heiress Margaret Ives. Everyone knows her. Everyone wants to know about her. To write this book would be everything. But when she finishes her interview, she's like, wait a minute, who's that guy over there? Surely not Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Hayden Anderson, who was already good at writing biographies. Oh, no.
He won a Pulitzer for writing a biography. Yes.
He literally won a Pulitzer. How am I going to get this job? Long story short, basically, Margaret makes the two try out and figure out who of the two that she wants to write their book. And then in learning so and kind of experiencing that, sorry, that noise is my dog. I don't know how she got that toy.
Don't worry about it.
And learning and experiencing that, they get to know each other, Margaret, and have to figure out actually why they're there in the first place. And wait a minute, isn't this lady like super rich? Why'd she call us two?
And then they got to unravel the mystery in the middle of it. But what did you think of Great Big Beautiful Life?
I liked it. I thought it was very sweet. I thought it was lovely. I thought it was Emily Henry trying something new, which I totally get. Some people would be a little off put by. I personally, as a writer, love it when she writes about writers. I think it's so fun. I thought it was lovely. I love a grumpy sunshine situation, and I was here for it the whole way through.
Alicia, what about you? So I feel because this book kind of landed in a particularly divisive kind of way. So why do you think it was so divisive after it landed?
I think that a book's marketing plays a huge role in how readers receive it, because they trust their favorite authors. And so when their favorite author comes out with like a newsletter, which Emily Henry has called her grocery list, and she says, this is something very different from what I've done before, that immediately sets the tone. And then when her book is picked up by Reese Witherspoon as part of Reese's book club picks, and Reese, this boggles my mind still, stands there and says it's a mystery thriller, and I'm like, where
we're all looking for the thriller here.
Where was that? To me, a mystery thriller implies some kind of law breaking, some kind of spookiness.
There is a mystery. There's a question at the core of this book, but there isn't it's not a mystery.
The biggest question I had is why somebody would drink iced green tea instead of coffee in the morning.
It's Georgia. You know what I mean?
That was the biggest mystery of mine going on in this book. And so I think that, we saw this a little bit with Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us. The marketing has a responsibility to its readers to describe a book appropriately and to convey in its marketing who the audience, the intended audience is, but also who would enjoy this book. And I think if you're a reader of Emily Henry, you'll enjoy this book. If you're a reader of Taylor Jenkins Reid, you'll enjoy this book. It gave me Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibes, like right off the bat. If you listen to Taylor Swift, the Last Great American Dynasty, if you like classics, The Great Gatsby, like these are the vibes that are coming from Alice Scott's interviews with Margaret Ives. But I think that the division on this is that some people didn't know about the marketing. So some people aren't subscribed to newsletters or don't follow their favorite authors online. They are simply people who will pick up a book, like you said, at the airport. And they're expecting funny story. They're expecting beach read, and they get something in between Happy Place and a contemporary literary fiction kind of. Maybe like a Daisy Jones and the Six type of book. And they're disappointed by that. And I get it. Your author does something new. I think
taking
that the
a risk,
term
I should say,
auto-buy,
you know? Yes.
Exactly. But auto-buy author is a term that is used so much. And I think it almost implies that if an author wrote it and you've loved all their previous work, you have to love their future work.
I think what I loved about that book is that I think even if you are familiar with like what the thing that Emily Henry does, this is a book that's saying, you know what, we can do things a little bit differently and a little bit sideways, and in doing so, you get to expand what your reader sort of expects of you. I'm unfortunately out of time, you guys, but this has been tremendous, and I could talk about this forever, but I got to leave it there. Thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course.
Bye.
C.T. Jones writes about the internet and pop culture for Rolling Stone. Alicia Foshay is a writer and bookish content creator on TikTok and Instagram. You can find her at als.bookclub. Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry is available right now. For the folks on YouTube, we got to say goodbye to you. For the rest of you, stick around. There's more to come.